I'm a real boss, like a real boss with 2 kids that look up to me. Like, I like being single. Single is fun. Like, if you in your 20s right now, I'll just say, like, if you in your 20s, So y'all went and got this. Yeah.
You talk about pizzas?
It's good. Okay. Do I look crazy? I don't think I'm crazy. I just feel like I'm not letting that nail. One thing about me, I'm a boss. I don't know what you is, but I'm a boss. I don't know how you working or who you working for, but I'm the boss. You feel me? I don't be on none of that 9 to 5.
It started as an ordinary evening in a quiet neighborhood. A young mother of 2, and weeks away from bringing a new life into the world, was wrapping up her day. Her children played nearby, their laughter filling the air. But as the night deepened, something happened. Something so horrifying that it would shatter everything. In a matter of moments, the joy of a growing family turned into a scene of unimaginable tragedy. A single gunshot rang out, piercing the silence, and what came next would leave investigators baffled and almost confused, and a family devastated. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, a devastating mishap no one could foresee. But as detectives dug deeper, the story began to unravel. Conflicting accounts, chilling details from witnesses too young to fully comprehend the horror they saw, and evidence that didn't quite add up. Was this truly an accident, or an occurrence with ulterior motives? And what about the man who was supposed to protect her? Was he telling the truth, or hiding something darker? Because by the time you hear the whole story, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and the dangerous secrets people keep. In the early hours of October 22nd, 2024, a 911 call shattered the silence of a Tallahassee neighborhood. A 26-year-old mother of 2, Maya Johnson, 9 weeks pregnant with her 3rd child, had been fatally shot in her own kitchen. Her boyfriend, 22-year-old Jakari Martin Sugren, claimed it was a tragic accident. But as investigators dug deeper, unsettling questions emerged. Welcome to Mind Twist True Crime Stories, where all our stories are based on true crimes. Kindly support us by subscribing to this channel. Hit the notification bell icon so you won't miss any of our latest stories. Who was Maya Johnson? Beyond the headlines and the investigation, what kind of life did she lead before it was so tragically cut short? To truly understand the gravity of this case, we need to step back and take a closer look at the woman at the center of it all. Maya Johnson was a 26-year-old mother raising 2 young children. Friends and family describe her as fiercely devoted to her kids, a woman who did everything she could to make sure they felt loved and cared for. Her life wasn't without its challenges, but she faced them with determination. In her day-to-day life, Maya was just like so many mothers, juggling the responsibilities of parenting while trying to create a better future. Those who knew her speak of her infectious laughter and the way she could light up a room. Yet behind that smile, there were struggles. According to her Instagram profile, she was a traveling lash teach, and she sold men's clothing as well. Maya was 9 weeks pregnant with her 3rd child, a new life she was preparing to welcome into the world. This pregnancy was a glimmer of hope in what was often a turbulent relationship with her boyfriend, Jakari Martin Sugren. Her friends say she believed in second chances, holding on to the hope that things could improve for the sake of her growing family. But balancing hope with the realities of a strained relationship wasn't easy. Neighbors recall frequent arguments coming from their home, and some even expressed concern for Maya's safety. Still, she never gave up on trying to build a life filled with love and stability for her children. While Maya's days revolved around her children, she also had dreams of her own. A close friend revealed that Maya often talked about wanting to go back to school, to create a life where her kids could look up to her, not just as a mother, but as an inspiration. She wanted to break the cycle of struggle and give her children opportunities she never had. But those aspirations were often overshadowed by the challenges of her personal life. Mia's relationship with Jakari, according to those closest to her, was marked by moments of love, but also by a pattern of tension and conflict. It was a dynamic that many found concerning, but Mia held on to the hope that things could change. Behind closed doors, however, the cracks in her relationship with Jakari were growing deeper. Neighbors would later tell detectives about heated arguments, often escalating to the point where they feared something terrible might happen. Tragically, those fears became a reality. As investigators dig deeper into the events of October 22, 2024, questions about her final moments and the man who pulled the trigger only grow more pressing. Stay with us as we uncover the secrets and contradictions surrounding this case. It began with something as small as a social media notification, a liked photo on Instagram. But what started as a minor disagreement spiraled into an explosive confrontation that would leave a mother of two and her unborn child dead. The question remains, how did it escalate so quickly? It was October 22, 2024. In the quiet Tallahassee home Maya Johnson shared with her boyfriend, Jakari Martin Sugren, and her two children. That evening, a seemingly insignificant spark ignited their argument. Maya discovered that Jakari had liked another woman's Instagram photo. For her, it wasn't just about the photo. It was the principle, the growing feeling of distrust in their already tense relationship. For Jakari, it was something he brushed off as unimportant, but the argument quickly became heated. As words flew and tensions rose, the couple's voices filled the house. Mia's two young children, likely accustomed to hearing these arguments, were nearby, their quiet presence adding a layer of tragedy to what would soon unfold. Jakari, perhaps seeking to avoid further conflict, made a decision that he later told authorities was meant to de-escalate the situation. He decided to leave the house for the night. But instead of simply walking out, he began to pack his belongings, a move that only added fuel to the fire. In his account to police, Jakari admitted to taking Maya's phone earlier during the argument. He claimed he hid it in their bedroom, sparking further tension as Maya accused him of trying to control her. As the argument grew more intense, Jakari's choice to pack his things seemed less like a retreat and more like an escalation. And then there was the gun. Jakari later told investigators that he tucked the firearm under his arm as he moved through the house. Why he had the gun at all remains a question. In his version of events, he said he was gathering his wallet, phone, and charger from the kitchen when Mia confronted him again. She believed he still had her phone, and in frustration, she began throwing things at him and chasing him around the kitchen. This is where the story takes a darker turn. According to Jakari, the gun discharged during this chaotic moment. But detectives found inconsistencies in his account, and they were left questioning. Was the presence of the gun a precaution, a threat, or simply negligence? One fact is clear. Its role in the argument turned the night from a heated dispute into an irreversible tragedy. A social media argument, a decision to leave, and the unexplained presence of a firearm. These were the elements leading to Maya Johnson's death, but the details remain murky. Why was Jakari holding a loaded gun during an argument? And was this truly an accident, or is there more to the story than he's admitting? The trajectory of the bullet, the statements from the children, and the evidence left behind all paint a picture. But it's one filled with contradictions. Do you think the presence of the gun was intentional or a reckless accident? Share your thoughts below. Your opinion matters as we continue unraveling this case.
New at 6, Leon County deputies say this man shot and killed a pregnant woman and her unborn child. Jakari Martin Sugren is facing 2 manslaughter charges now. LCSO says the shooting happened just after 1 this morning off River Breeze Lane, that is near Tower Road. Deputies say Martin Sugren drove the woman to the hospital where she and the child both died. They have not shared any information about what led up to the shooting.
A single gunshot, a shattered life, and 2 young children left in the wake of tragedy. The story Jakari Martin Sugren tells is one of chaos and accident, but does the evidence support his account? And if it truly was an accident, why did it happen at all? According to Jakari Martin Sugren, the night spiraled out of control as he tried to leave the house to avoid further conflict. He claimed he had tucked a loaded gun under his arm, a detail that raised immediate questions. Why was a loaded firearm even in play during a domestic argument? Was it for protection, intimidation, or something else entirely? Jakari's explanation was that the gun was simply being moved as he packed his belongings, but investigators would soon find troubling inconsistencies in his story. In his statement, Jakari described a frantic moment in the kitchen. Maya Johnson, upset and accusing him of withholding her phone, chased him around the space. Items were thrown, words were shouted, and tensions boiled over. It was during this chaotic exchange, he claimed, that the firearm discharged. A single bullet was fired, striking Maya and ending her life. Jakari insisted that the gunshot was accidental, the result of a struggle and misplaced positioning. But the details he provided didn't add up. Using a toy gun during his interview, Jakari attempted to demonstrate how the firearm had been positioned under his arm. Detectives immediately noted flaws in his demonstration. The angle of the gun and the trajectory of the bullet didn't align with Maya's injuries or where she was reportedly standing. Could the gun really have gone off without the trigger being pulled? Investigators doubted it, and this question would become central to the case. Maya Johnson, just 25 years old and 9 weeks pregnant, collapsed in her kitchen. Her 2 young children were inside the home, their innocence shattered in a single instant. Jakari, realizing what had happened, claimed he immediately called 911 and rushed Maya to Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare. But the damage had already been done. Maya and her unborn child were pronounced dead, leaving her family, her children, and an entire neighborhood devastated. The shooting marked the tragic culmination of an argument that, in another life, might have ended with slammed doors and silence. Instead, it ended in unimaginable loss. The questions investigators asked that night were the same ones haunting anyone who heard this story. Why was a loaded gun being handled during an argument? Could Jakari's actions have been more reckless than accidental? And most importantly, could this tragedy have been avoided altogether? The forensic evidence, the angle of the bullet, the lack of any obstruction to the gun's bolt-action mechanism suggested a different reality than the one Jakari described. The story didn't add up, and doubts about his innocence began to grow. Maya's children, interviewed by authorities, told a simple yet heartbreaking truth. Jakari shot our mother. Was this the honest testimony of witnesses or the misinterpretation of a traumatized moment? Investigators were determined to find out. A single gunshot that Jakari claimed was an accident left Maya Johnson dead. But with inconsistencies in his story and mounting evidence pointing to negligence or worse, the question remains, was this truly an accident, or was there more to Jakari's intentions than he's admitting? Do you think Jakari's actions were reckless or intentional? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your opinions matter as we uncover the truth behind this tragic case. 2 narratives emerged that night, one spoken by a man claiming a tragic accident, and another told by the evidence left behind. The question investigators had to answer: could they both be true? Just hours after the shooting, law enforcement arrived at the scene, greeted by chaos. The kitchen where Maya Johnson had been shot was in disarray, reflecting the turmoil that had unfolded just moments before her death. Jakari Martin Sugrin was cooperative but visibly shaken. He repeated his story to officers: a struggle over a phone, a gun tucked under his arm, and a firearm accidentally discharging. His words were filled with regret, but even in those early moments, investigators were skeptical. The first responders knew that accidents involving firearms often followed a predictable pattern: negligence in handling, misfires, or mishaps during cleaning. But this felt different. Jakari's account painted a picture of panic and disorder, a scuffle, a weapon misplaced, and a sudden devastating outcome. But the physical evidence in the kitchen suggested another story entirely. Detectives noted the trajectory of the bullet, which was clean and precise. It struck Maya in a way that didn't align with Jakari's claim of a gun positioned awkwardly under his arm. The question arose: how could a firearm discharge in such a perfect trajectory without deliberate force? Adding to the complexity, neighbors reported hearing loud arguments earlier in the evening. Was this just a tragic culmination of heated words, or was there more intent behind the trigger pull? And if it was accidental, why hadn't Jakari taken steps to secure the gun earlier? Detectives on the scene immediately picked up on inconsistencies. They knew that emotions run high in domestic disputes, But they also knew that an explanation like Chakari's needed to match the physical reality. The 911 call played a critical role in shaping their initial impressions. Chakari's voice, frantic but controlled, repeated, "It was an accident. I didn't mean to shoot her." But seasoned investigators noted something unusual, a lack of detail. Chakari described what had happened, but only in the vaguest of terms. One officer remarked in his report, "It's not what he said, it's what he avoided saying that stood out." Back at the station, detectives began putting together the timeline. Witness statements, including those from Maya's children, hinted at a volatile situation in the moments before the gunshot. The children's words were simple but damning. "Mommy and Chakari were fighting. Then he shot her." Was this the raw truth from innocent bystanders, or the confusion of young minds in a traumatic moment? Adding to the puzzle, the gun itself became a focal point. Investigators noted it was fully loaded with the safety off, a state that raised more questions than answers. Why would someone carry a firearm in such a dangerous condition, especially around a pregnant woman and young children? Every detail seemed to push Chakari's accident explanation closer to implausibility. What do you think about the inconsistencies in Chakari's story so far? Do you believe his account? Or do you think the evidence is pointing to something more deliberate? Let us know in the comments. Kindly join the conversation. Why did a seemingly trivial argument over an Instagram like escalate into a fatal shooting? As investigators delved into the case, they uncovered inconsistencies in Chakari Martin Sugren's account.
We have new information about the deadly shooting of a pregnant woman in Tallahassee yesterday. Arrest papers say she was the suspect's girlfriend. Chakari Martin Sugren told investigators that he and Maya Johnson were arguing at their home on River Breeze Lane. He said he grabbed some of his belongings and was trying to leave when the gun went off. He claims the gun was not in his hand, but pinned against his body. The gunshot killed Johnson and her unborn child. Martin Sugren is facing 2 counts of manslaughter.
The charges against Chakari Martin Sugren were not for murder, but for manslaughter, a decision that sparked heated debates both inside the courtroom and in public opinion. To charge Chakari with first-degree murder, the prosecution needed evidence of premeditation, proof that he planned Maya's death. But nothing in the investigation suggested a calculated act. Second-degree murder, on the other hand, required evidence of intent to kill, though without premeditation. Here, too, the case faltered. The lack of clear motive or direct proof of purposeful violence made this charge difficult to pursue. Instead, the prosecutors settled on manslaughter, a charge that acknowledges the killing of another person, but without intent. This meant the focus shifted to recklessness and negligence. Was this decision a compromise, or the only realistic path to conviction? As the charges were announced, opinions varied widely. Some argued the manslaughter charge was appropriate, given the conflicting evidence and the complexities of intent. Without clear proof, a murder charge could have risked acquittal altogether. Others, however, believed justice fell short. To them, Maya's death, regardless of Chakari's intentions, deserved the full weight of a murder charge. Should negligence carry the same weight as intent? Did the prosecutors underestimate the strength of their case? Was this another example of the legal system failing a victim? During the trial, the prosecution leaned heavily on the forensic evidence, the children's statements, and the inconsistencies in Chakari's version of events. But their inability to definitively prove intent loomed over every argument they made. In contrast, the defense seized on the lack of direct evidence, portraying the shooting as a tragic accident. They argued that while Chakari's actions were reckless, they didn't amount to murder. But was this really justice for Maya? Could a manslaughter charge ever be enough for a mother of 2, soon to be 3, who lost her life in an instant? As the jury deliberated, the courtroom sat in tense silence. Outside, the public waited for an answer to a question that would linger long after the verdict. When intent is unclear, how do we define accountability? Do you agree with the decision to pursue manslaughter instead of murder? What would justice for Maya look like to you? Let us know in the comments below. What if this tragedy wasn't an isolated incident? What if instead it was part of a much larger, more alarming pattern? The shooting of Maya Johnson was not just the end of a life. It was a stark reminder of a broader, more terrifying reality: domestic violence. In Leon County, the numbers were hard to ignore. In the years leading up to Maya's death, domestic violence-related homicides had steadily increased. Maya's tragic fate wasn't the first. The local community was grappling with the devastating effects of abuse behind closed doors, abuse that far too often turned deadly. According to the Leon County Sheriff's Office, violent domestic incidents had been on the rise, with increasing calls for help and reports of escalating violence. In just the year prior, a disturbing trend emerged, with several cases involving partners whose violent tendencies had been well known but ignored until it was too late. Maya's case wasn't an anomaly. In fact, it mirrored other domestic violence-related deaths in the region, where partners in toxic relationships often found themselves unable to escape. One case from 2019 involved a woman named Ashley Williams, who was found murdered in her apartment. Her boyfriend, like Chakari, had been accused of reckless behavior, but without clear proof of murder. The case was labeled as manslaughter, another tragic incident that went under the radar in the public eye. In another case, a mother of 3 who had been in a volatile relationship was fatally shot by her partner. Though the signs of abuse were there, frequent hospital visits, police reports, and restraining orders, her death still raised more questions than answers. In each of these cases, authorities wrestled with proving intent, even as the families of victims cried for justice. The truth is, the violence is often silent. Many victims never report the abuse, or when they do, it's ignored. In Maya's case, friends and family had known about her troubled relationship with Chakari, but had no idea it would end this way. According to domestic violence advocates, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Yet in many communities, the resources available to victims, safe housing, mental health support, legal protection, are often insufficient. Domestic violence doesn't just affect the direct victims. It impacts children, families, and entire neighborhoods. How many more Mayas are out there? How many more women are living in fear, unsure whether they will make it through the night? And how many, like Maya, will never get a chance to tell their side of the story? This case highlights an urgent need for domestic violence awareness. While Maya's story has come to light, it's only one example of the countless others that don't. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, the time to act is now. There are hotlines, shelters, and organizations dedicated to helping those trapped in dangerous situations. No one should have to suffer in silence. Maya's life should never be forgotten, and her story, like so many others, needs to be heard. Together, we can fight for justice and ensure that those who endure abuse no longer do so in the shadows. Maya's story also shines a spotlight on the warning signs in relationships that may appear harmless at first, but escalate into dangerous patterns of control, manipulation, and violence. Was Maya's growing sense of fear and isolation evident to those close to her? She was pregnant, raising 2 children, and dealing with an abusive partner, a situation far too common in cases of domestic violence. Could anyone have seen the signs earlier? Could the arguments, the emotional distance, and the controlling behavior have been flagged sooner, before things turned fatal? This tragedy reminds us that, in many cases, the clues are there long before the violence erupts. But for those in the situation, it can be hard to see. But perhaps the most important question remains: if the warning signs were there, why did no one step in? Why did it take the tragic loss of a mother and a partner for the truth to come to light? As the investigation continues, it's clear that we may never fully understand the motivations behind that fatal night. But Maya's story should serve as a warning. For those still in danger, it's never too late to ask for help. This murder case underscores the complexity of domestic violence. It's never as simple as an argument gone wrong. It's the culmination of power, control, and manipulation that may begin subtly, but when unchecked, leads to irreversible damage. Now, we want to hear from you. After hearing all the facts, the evidence, and the twists in this case, what do you think? Was it manslaughter or murder? Was this truly a tragic accident? Or could this have been avoided? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters, and these discussions are important to raising awareness and seeking justice. We want to remind everyone watching that domestic violence is real and happens every day. It can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, or background. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, there are resources available to help. Don't wait until it's too late. National Domestic Violence Hotline. Call 1-800-799-SAFE 7233. Text START to 88788 for help. Visit domesticviolence.org for more resources. If you found Maya's story impactful, share this video and help spread awareness. The more people talk about it, the more likely we are to make a change. Maya Johnson's life was cut short, but her story shouldn't be forgotten. What do we do with the lessons we've learned? Will we continue to ignore the warning signs, or will we act before it's too late? As you think about her story, ask yourself, what would you do if you saw the signs? If you are looking for more intriguing and entertaining stories, kindly check out other true crime stories on this channel that talked about domestic. Dear viewer, if you still haven't subscribed to this channel, kindly do so now, as your support will mean a lot to us and keep us encouraged. Until next time, stay safe, and thanks for watching.